Bom dia, boa tarde, boa noite, or whatever the case may be. My name is Marcus, and I am the host of the Black Brazil Today YouTube channel, as well as the blackbraziltoday.com blog, where I analyze Brazil from the perspective of race. So today's uh, feature is going to be about the hotly discussed, recently released film starring Viola Davis entitled "The Woman King." Um, it's like, how can you really avoid talking about it? And I'm not going to get into the film itself in this video. I'm just going to focus on something that I don't think the American media has really covered that much, and that's just the fact that for the first time in Brazil, Viola Davis learns Afro-Brazilian history, visits a samba school, and records an interview to promote the Woman King film. I don't know how many people have seen this film. It looked like it grossed, I don't know, I think it was like 19 million in its first, I think, weekend. And from what I'm seeing, it seems like the producers and the studio responsible for the film is trying to promote it as if it's a big success, when in reality, most films you want to see come out of the gate and have its best weekend and maybe get back the money that was already invested in the film. And from what I understand, that's not quite how it panned out. What I'm curious about right now is just seeing people's reaction, the two sides of the debate about whether this is a good film, whether it's a good depiction of Black people. What are the positives of this film? What are the negatives of this film? And I'm not going to get into any of that today. That's not the point of this post. The point of this post is just to cover Viola Davis's trip to Rio. I think she landed in Rio maybe about a week ago. Well, by the time this video comes up, it may be a week and a half, 2 weeks. And just to give a review of that, because it's a similar situation with a lot of stories that I cover. Stories that there'll be big news in Brazil, but they don't necessarily make big news around the world. Being that Brazil is just not one of the countries that's on the world stage. I remember some years ago when the country seemed to be on the move up. The economy was exploding. Brazil's economy was like in the top 6 or 7 top economies in the world. Because of its rise on the world stage, they were able to host the 2014 World Cup, the 2016 Olympics. But it seemed like as soon as those events were named, as Brazil received those, it wasn't but maybe, I don't know, a few years later before everything just started to seem to fall apart. It was a big discussion about, they spent all of this money for these soccer stadiums to host the 2014 World Cup. And it was like, there were a couple that were just completely empty. It was like, okay, what are we going to do with these stadiums that we specially built for this World Cup? And Brazil hasn't really been on the world stage since then. Brazil has always considered itself to be the country of the future. Like, one day we're going to achieve our full potential. But as it still hasn't, it's never reached that, let's say, title of world power country. And with everything started to fall apart, a few years after, like, Lula, the Workers' Party president, had been in the presidency for 2 straight terms, and then his handpicked successor, Dilma Rousseff, who she won the election after Lula, and people, like, really, in some ways, they considered it Lula's 3rd term. But in the middle of her 2nd term, that's when there was a movement to try to get her removed from office. So, anyway, my whole point here is that, as Brazil is not a country that's considered a world power, as it's a country where English is not the dominant language, a lot of news that's going down in Brazil is not stuff that you're going to hear in the American media. So I don't know how many English language sites have already covered Viola Davis's trip to Brazil, but that's what I wanted to talk about today, and not getting into the details of the film. Okay, so these are just some of the pictures that I posted. I released this blog post recently. So, without further ado, let me just get into some of the things that I saw that was covered on Viola Davis's first trip to Brazil. So by now, most of you have probably already heard of all the hoopla surrounding the new Viola Davis film, The Woman King. Let me first say that I have yet to watch this film, although I have read and heard numerous reviews about the film. As I haven't seen this film and I don't know if I plan to watch it before this month is out, I wanted to only focus on one thing that most American media is probably not discussing, and that is that Davis recently traveled to Brazil for her first time to promote this film. So this is obviously a movie poster. And in Brazil, the movie has been translated as A Mulher Rei, which is, it's a translation of The Woman King. So obviously, when this poster came out, it says in breve, exclusively in the cinemas. In breve means, coming soon. And the movie just opened, today is September 23rd, actually, when I'm recording this video. And if I'm not mistaken, the film actually debuted today. So I'm curious to see what not just the general Brazil's general media is going to say about the film, but I'm curious to know what Brazil's Black media is going to say about the film. One thing that I often find problematic with Brazil's Black media is that I don't see a whole lot of criticism of things that come out of Black media in the United States or Black personalities. It's almost like when they see the success of certain African Americans, whether it's Oprah Winfrey or, Dr. Dre or 50 Cent, Tyler Perry, or any just major project, any major film that comes out with a primarily Black cast or whatever, it's always celebrated there. But it seems to me that Black Brazil's media often misses the other side of the coin when the discussion is about media projects that are either directed by African Americans or featuring a prominent percentage of African Americans in that particular project. Just over the years, I've noticed this. It's like the discussion that you'll find among African Americans when there's criticism of African American artists. This is a discussion that I don't see a lot of Black Brazilian outlets discuss this. It's always they focus on the positive side. They don't see the critiques that some African Americans will have with these projects. So I just remember years ago, the television series Empire, for example, it was a highly praised, like, wow, it's a Black cast. In Brazil, there were a lot of people who were praising it because you just don't see a lot of TV series in Brazil that feature a majority, if not exclusively Black cast. So it was a thing of celebration. Whereas in the United States, a lot of Black people had a problem with that series. The same thing with people like Oprah and Tyler Perry. Black Brazilians in the Black Brazil media will celebrate these figures. Look how much money they've made. Look at the success story. But they often miss the discussion that's going on among African Americans about the problematic aspects of these personalities. So this is why I'm curious to see how Brazil's Black media specifically is going to deal with this film, because what I've seen as of right now is just, oh, it's great. It's a film of, majority, Black people. It's a prominent role, highlighting the role of this tribe, in Africa. And so again, praise, but I'm questioning if Black Brazil's media will have any inkling of the discussion that's going on among African Americans right now, with one side saying this is a great film and the other side saying this is very problematic. So I'm gonna just have to wait and see, as people already saw, for a number of years now, there have been Black Brazilians who have been organizing these all Black, they will organize a session where they will get a popular movie theater and just have the theater filled with Afro-Brazilians. They organize these events and the theater will just be packed with Afro-Brazilians. They did this for several films, including the Black Panther film. There's a number of films they've done this with. And from what I saw, it looked like they were organizing a lot of Afro-Brazilians to go see this film as well. So that's what I'm saying. I'm kind of curious to know how Black Brazil's media is going to report on this, if they're going to be able to go into both sides, both the positive and the problematic side about this film. Now, why would Viola Davis go to Brazil to promote this film, you might ask? Well, I don't know the exact reason, but I can take a couple or a few educated guesses as to why the star chose to come to Brazil. First, there has been much chatter over the past few decades about Brazil having one of the largest, if not the largest, populations of African descent in the Americas, provoking the interest of tens of thousands of people in visiting the country. Second, with the rise of Black consciousness politics in recent years, Afro Brazilians are starving for representation in the media. Brazilians of various colors, races, and social classes consume a lot of American media, including films and television series. And specifically speaking of Black Brazilians, uh, they are feeling, as they have long felt neglected by their own mainstream media, they often look to American media that features Black Americans in prominent roles. I've done pieces in the past where if you spend any amount of time in Brazil, you'll notice how much productions out of the United States dominate. I'm not going to say dominate. Obviously, Brazil has its own media, but television series and sitcoms, and particularly American films, they're they have quite a sizable following in Brazil. Like I've said before, you go to a movie theater wherever in Brazil, and it's pretty normal to find that 8 of the 10, if you have 10 films at a cinema complex, it's pretty normal that like 7 to 8 out of 10 films will be American films. So this also transcends over into television, where a lot of American TV series, even reality shows or sitcoms, will be on Brazil's television screens, and they'll just hire voice actors, to overdub the series or the film or the television show in Portuguese, right? So it kind of serves as a way of serving the Black Brazilian population when they feel like they've in some ways are being made invisible in Brazil's own media. So they look to the United States and it's like, wow, we can see Black representation with African Americans, even though African Americans also complain of perhaps the small representation of Black people in America's media. So anyway, the third reason I suspect that could contribute to why Viola Davis has an interest in Brazil is because Black Brazilians have been receiving all sorts of recognition in recent years in a myriad of ways. Afro Brazilians are regularly named some of the most influential Black people in the world by the directors of MePad, meaning the most influential people of African descent, which is a global civil society initiative in support of the United Nations International Decade for People of African Descent. That's what this flyer is all about right here. Maybe some of you have heard about the MePad initiative. Again, they usually pick about, I don't know, somewhere between 70, 80, or 100 representatives, Black representatives around the world from various countries, and just giving them awards and honors on being very influential around the world for Blacks, right? Several Afro Brazilians have been nominated in recent editions of the BET Awards and the BET Hip Hop Awards. And a number of Afro Brazilian music artists have been recently prominently featured in digital displays in New York's famed Times Square. I remember some years ago, obviously, this was in 2000. This is an article I put up from 2018 where, 14-year-old MC, her name is MC Sophia, her message of Black pride and empowerment will represent Brazil at the 2018 BET Awards in the category of Best New International Act. So since then, that was really a big deal in 2018. But then I noticed it seemed like every year that either the BET Awards or the BET Hip Hop Awards had Brazilian artists being featured in their section for best international artists. I don't think anybody's won that so far, but it seems like it's been 3 or 4 straight years where you find Brazilian artists being nominated in these categories in both the BET Awards and the BET Hip Hop Awards. Then you see these huge advertisements in New York's Times Square, where you see a whole lot of Brazilian music artists being featured in these enormous digital displays. And it's not that it's not a good thing, but I do just wonder what's going on, why all of a sudden. And as I know that they're promoting more than just Brazilian artists, but I'm just curious as to what is going on that all of a sudden there seems to be this outreach to Afro Brazilians and their accomplishments. As I said, it's a good thing, but at the same time, in the back of my mind, I wonder like what's driving this. It's like it's some type of agenda. The fourth reason why Viola Davis might feel the need to come to Brazil is that while Brazil doesn't figure prominently in the Woman King film, it is part of the backdrop in the story, as many of the enslaved Africans sent to Brazil came from the Dahomey tribe featured in the film. A bit of Portuguese is even heard spoken in the film. Fifth, Davis herself is apparently impressed with Brazil as she formed a friendship with one of the country's top Black actresses, Thais Araújo. When Araújo came to the United States in 2019 and participated in the 47th American Film Lifetime Achievement Gala, which honored actor Denzel Washington. Davis invited Araújo to her home in Beverly Hills, and the two have been quote unquote sisters ever since. Last year, Davis also shared a post by a young Afro-Brazilian woman who caught her eye by posting a video of herself showing the diversity of hairstyles that Afro-textured hair can be made into. I remember when this story posted because, having a famous African-American retweet this woman's video, Camila Albino, if I'm not mistaken, that's what her name is. That's the story that I have here. Video by Brazilian woman Camila Albino showing the diversity of Black hair goes viral after being shared by Viola Davis. It was a cute little video. You see that she was rocking all these different hairstyles, and Jackson's "Remember the Time" song. And like I said, people caught on to it, and it was like anytime something happens where a Brazilian is honored in the American media, it always becomes a big deal in Brazil. So this is what happened in again, what year was this? I think this was maybe 2018. Was it? No, it was 2020. So it was just 2 years ago. Well, almost 2 years ago. Okay, this is the tweet that Viola Davis put out about this woman's video. So if this were all of the connections between Davis and Brazil, that alone would be enough, but there's still more. Number 6, the 20th season of Brazil's ever popular Big Brother Brazil reality show was historic when the anesthesiologist, digital influencer, samba school dancer, television host, and YouTuber Thelma Assis took the top prize. I think when a person wins on Big Brother Brazil, they win like 1.5 million reais. Davis declared her support for Thelma after learning about the reality show. Now, I'm not really big on the reality shows. Obviously, Big Brother Brazil is a copy of, like an American show. Like I said, if you don't have in Brazil's media where they just simply import the American series and overdub it with Portuguese words, then they'll copy the show. There's, you have Big Brother Brazil, for example, that's in its, I think it was just in its 22nd season. You have, when I was in Brazil, when I heard about this singing reality show called The Voice Brazil, and because I was in Sao Paulo, I didn't even realize that, it was another copy of another American show, just The Voice. So you see this often in Brazil where they either just directly import something from the United States, a media project, or they'll create their own version of it. So anyway, Viola Davis declared her support for Thelma after learning about the reality show. On Twitter, Viola shared a post by Thais Araújo defending that Thelma Assis should be the champion of the reality show for the sake of representation. Impressed with the American actress's attitude, Thais Araújo posted, "When Viola Davis retweets you on the final day of Big Brother Brazil, what do you do, Brazil?" You can see here, okay, this is a translation of what Thais Araújo tweeted. You see here where it says Thelma campeã, which means champion Thelma. People were rooting for Thelma Assis to win this particular season of that reality show. Now, the other thing that I remember is that there's never been like a clearly Black male who's won on that reality show. And that particular year, a popular actor, Babu Santana, he made it nearly to the final round before he got eliminated. So a lot of celebration for Thelma winning. But to this day, there still hasn't been a clearly Black man who has won this series. There's been a few guys who people would say, well, he's kind of Black or he's mixed or whatever he might be. But that a lot of people were questioning why has there not been a clearly Black man who's won Big Brother Brazil after 22 seasons? So anyway, Thelma has gone on to some incredible things since she won that reality show. I mean, she was already a successful anesthesiologist at the time that she participated in Big Brother Brazil. But in recent years, there's been a push to have more Black representation on that reality show, right? Anyway, the seventh reason why Viola Davis might have taken a particular interest in Brazil over the last few years is that on Twitter, when a Brazilian fan wrote in English asking for the actress to send a message to Brazil, adding, "We love you very much." Davis not only replied to the post, but she surprised Brazilians when she wrote her response in Portuguese saying, "Oi, Brasil, tudo bem," which means everything okay. The actress even added two hearts with the colors of the national flag, one green and one yellow. Thelma Assis, again, the champion of Big Brother Brazil 20, answered the actress's question, saying, "Hi, Viola Davis. Despite all the difficulties brought on by the virus, we are doing well." Obviously, this is speaking on the lockdown that was going on in Brazil because of the whole COVID-19 thing. The eighth reason for why Davis seems to have taken a liking to Brazil is that she seems to appreciate Brazil's art. According to some sources, the actress and producer, along with her husband, Julius Tenon, expressed interest in adapting the Brazilian play called O Beijo no Asfalto by Brazilian playwright Nelson Rodrigues. The project will be produced in the United States with Wise Entertainment, a company co-founded by the playwright's grandson, Mauricio Mota. The adaptations are expected to be made in the theater, in cinema, and also on television. And ninth, as the Ele não hashtag, meaning not him, was trending on Twitter as soon as Jair Bolsonaro won Brazil's presidential election in 2018, Davis showed that she was in the know about what was happening politically in Brazil. Again, Jair Bolsonaro being what people consider an extreme right conservative president. Brazil is really divided right now. This is an election year, and Bolsonaro is running behind in the polls behind the former president Lula, who I mentioned before. Lula did 2 terms between 2003 and 2010. Then he was actually jailed for a little while because of this. I think the Lava Jato scandal some years ago, Operation Car Wash. It was translated in the English speaking press. He left the prison, and a lot of people believe that had Lula not going to prison, he might, if he would have ran that year, he probably would have beat Bolsonaro. And right now, he's ahead in the polls. So you have a split Brazil between this conservative side that says, Brazil is going too far to the left. They don't like a lot of Lula's policies. On the other hand, the left side of the country says Lula was the first president to open up the doors to social ascension for the millions of people who have long been blocked out of an opportunity to join the middle classes. So it's going to be intriguing to see what happens with this election. Davis posted on her Instagram account an image with an illustration of 5 people hugging. A woman, a representative of the LGBTQ plus community, a Black man, a Northeasterner, and an Indigenous man with the following phrase: "Stay united and strong." In the caption, she added, "Brazil, I stand with you." Well, I say I am with you, but these are representatives of all the people who feel that they're often excluded from mainstream Brazilian society. Now, from everything I've read, both on the positive side and the negative, I will eventually have to see this film just to come to my own conclusion. But if what some people are saying is true, I almost feel as though I need to save my money to send a message to Hollywood about the types of films depicting Black people that we will and will not accept. I want to look at this film with an open eye, but already from some of the things I've already discovered, there's going to be some aspects of this film that probably won't sit well with me. And I recently saw that Viola Davis herself came forward and said, yeah, this is a fictional story. The actress Lupita, what I also learned recently is that she had a chance to be in this film. And she decided to turn it down after she discovered the true history of the Dahomey people. That's, like I said, I'm not going to get into a review of the film, but just some of the things that I'm reading about it, it seems like there's something going on with this film beyond just the film itself. Like, what message is this movie trying to push? Why did it fabricate some parts of the history and fictionalize, some of these characters? A whole nother topic. Like I said, this report is just about Viola Davis's travel to Rio de Janeiro to promote the film. So as I said, this report will not go into aspects of the film itself, but simply report on Davis's activities since she arrived in Brazil. I would say sometime during the 3rd week of September. So the story that I posted earlier today on the blog: for the first time in Brazil, Viola Davis learns Afro-Brazilian history, visits a samba school, and records an interview to promote the Woman King film. Other things she did there also, I'm going to talk about a few of those things. So today's post is courtesy of the websites O Liberal, Yahoo Noticias, and Update Charts. This is a photo of Viola with her husband, as they visit the historically important Mangueira Samba School in Rio. So let's get into the story. Viola Davis is in Brazil to promote her new movie, The Woman King, in which she plays Nanisca, the general of the Amazons of the Dahomey tribe. A tribe, the area of Africa that this tribe would have lived in would be in present Benin over in Africa. Sunday, September 18th, the actress stopped in Rio de Janeiro and visited important places in the history of Black Brazilians. She went to the Cais do Valongo, meaning the Valongo Pier, in the Museu da História e da Cultura Afro-Brasileira, meaning Afro-Brazilian History and Culture Museum, or MUCAB, as it's called for short, for an event entitled The Impact of Women in Afro-Brazilian Culture, inspired by the feature film directed by filmmaker Gina Prince, was it Bythewood? Davis was accompanied by her husband, Julian Tenan, or is it Tenan or Tenan? The Woman King had a preview at the Copacabana Palace in Rio on Monday the 19th, but wasn't slated to be released until Thursday in Brazil under the title A Mulher Rei, which is an exact translation of The Woman King in Portuguese. In the United States, the title brought in $19 million at the box office in its first weekend, surpassing Sony's own expectations, which expected a return of US 12 million. I'm kind of skeptical about that because as this movie took $50 million to film, I don't think that the producers and the studio of this film was necessarily happy with a $19 million return on its first weekend. And I think that's kind of, I think it's trying to deceive the public into thinking they're happy with the box office attraction for the weekend, because you're going to say they expected a return of 12 million. It's almost like they're saying, well, we didn't expect this movie to make whole lot of money, because generally you want your movie to make a whole lot of money the first weekend that it's out. And according to what, 19 million, that's not even half of what the film cost to make. So I'm just wondering if they're putting that out just to I don't know, attract more viewers or something, because obviously I don't think 19 million is a great box office hit in the first weekend. The $50 million production was filmed in Africa with Black protagonists and from the perspective of the Agoji warriors from ancient Dahomey in 1823. Located in present day Benin in West Africa, the kingdom was marked by centuries of enslavement of Black people, most of them destined to Brazilian ports. Two characters played by the Brits, Jordan Bolger and what is it? I don't know if it's Hero or Hero Fiennes Tiffin. They both speak Portuguese and traffic slaves to Brazil. I honestly wonder, why did they choose two Brits for this film, for this part that's supposed to be playing Portuguese speaking people? They couldn't have just hired a couple of Brazilians or a couple of Portuguese, native speakers of Portuguese. They chose two British actors for these roles. Again, we must remember that Brazil was the recipient of the largest number of enslaved Africans sent to the Americas. Between 10 to 15 times more Africans were shipped to Brazil than to the United States, which is the point of several articles. Slavery, 4.8 million Africans were enslaved in Brazil. Those numbers, for many, it goes up to at least 5 million. The more they dig, they're pretty much, academia is set on the idea that 5 million Africans were shipped to Brazil over a period of time. This is an intriguing article right here, just discussing how slavery worked in Brazil. I know a lot of people are not really familiar with that. Anyway, continuing. Davis and her husband, Julius Tenon, who is an associate producer of the film, were welcomed by director Leandro Santana and museologist Larissa Machado. The event was shared on the museum's website, where the exhibit will be on display until October 1st. Among the items on display are photos of the scenes from the feature film, original costumes, and production information inspired by African culture and the relationship with Afro-Brazilian culture. So this is the historic Cais do Valongo region in downtown Rio de Janeiro. It's located in the port zone of Rio de Janeiro in the downtown of the city. And as it is the only material trace of the arrival of enslaved Africans on the entire American continent, it was awarded the title of World Heritage Site by UNESCO in 2017. It was the largest receiving port of slaves on the planet. It is part of the historical and archaeological circuit of the celebration of African heritage, along with five other places located in downtown Rio de Janeiro. Constructed in 1811, Cais do Valongo became a site for the arrival of and trade of enslaved Africans until 1831, when the transatlantic slave trade was officially prohibited. During the 20 years of its operation, it is estimated that somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million enslaved Africans entered Brazil through Valongo. Again, so we're talking 500,000 to 1 million that just came in through this port in Rio. This is 500,000 to 1 million of the overall 5 million that came in to Brazil through various ports throughout the country. This is a portrait of an area that was nicknamed Pequena Africa, meaning Little Africa. Between 1850 and 1920, the area around the Valongo became an area accompanied by those, or rather occupied by those enslaved in Brazil or blacks who had been freed. The area became so associated with black people and culture that Aiter dos Prazeres, one of the original creators of Brazil's most popular musical style, samba, nicknamed the region Pequena Africa, meaning Little Africa. Elements of Rio's Little Africa community were featured in the 2021 global television novella Nos Tempos do Imperador. So this is another, I've mentioned before, how many novellas in Brazil, televised, the soap operas that are based in the era of slavery. They got a whole long history of all of these novella that are timed to be taking place in the era of slavery in Brazil. Davis also checked out a rehearsal at the famed Estação Primeira da Mangueira Samba School in the northern zone of the city. The last Carnival title won by the school was in 2019, and it was entitled História para Ninar Gente Grande, meaning bedtime story for grown-ups, in which it talked about those marginalized by the history of Brazil, and it became one of the most popular sambas of Rio's Carnival. In its chorus, it quotes, "Hail the caboclos of July, who were made of steel in the years of lead. Brazil, the time has come to listen to the Marias, Mahins, Marielles, and Malés." So allow me to explain what some of these lyrics mean. The word caboclo is a term used to define native Brazilians. Anos de chumbo, or years of lead, refers to the hardest years of Brazil's 21-year dictatorship between 1964 and 1985, when there were numerous clashes between the military government and left-wing revolutionaries that led to the disappearance and torture of thousands of Brazilians. Maria in the lyric refers to Maria Filipa, who was known as the Black heroine of independence, a woman that played an important role in the clashes with the Portuguese during the Independence War in the state of Bahia from February 1822 to July of 1823. The name Mahin refers to Louisa Mahin, the mother of famed abolitionist Luiz Gama. Mahin was a former slave and played an instrumental role in the Black uprisings and revolts that took place, also in the state of Bahia in the 19th century, the most well-known being that of the 1835 Malés revolt of Black Muslims. Now, speaking of Luiz Gama, an incredible story here. I almost liken him to like a Frederick Douglass type. There was a film made about Luiz Gama. I think came out in 2021. And this is something that's it's a pleasant surprise, because it's only been in recent years that there's been enough Black Brazilian filmmakers that are getting their works directed and getting into Brazilian movie theaters. So this is an intriguing development that's been happening, particularly over the last decade, with a number of prominent Afro-Brazilian filmmakers who have been getting awards and accolades all over the world. So this film, Dr. Gama, about Afro-Brazilian abolitionist Luiz Gama, it debuts in theaters and streaming platform. This lawyer legally liberated 500 slaves. Now, what's intriguing about his story is that, being Black, he was barred from attending law school. But through his knowledge that he learned in studying about legalities, he was able to, with his legal knowledge, legally free 500 slaves. All right. Incredible film. Like I said, I think it came out last year. What else do we have here? Let's get back to this story, and I'll switch back over in a minute. But in the film, or rather in this Carnival song from Mangueira, Marielle refers to Marielle Franco. Some of you might have heard about her. She was the Rio-based city councilwoman who denounced atrocities committed against residents of poor, mostly Black communities. She was Black and bisexual. Franco stood for LGBT rights, racial equality, and human rights. Marielle was murdered in a brutal and still unsolved assassination in 2018 that made headlines all over the world for its brutality. It looked totally like a professional hit. The previously mentioned Malays were a group of Muslims that led one of the most infamous slave revolts in Salvador Bahia in the country's northeast in 1835. It's a big moment in Black Brazilian history. And, it's often covered in various blogs. There was actually a miniseries that came out that discussed this famous incident from the 19th century. A group of Black Muslims who led a slave revolt in 1835. Like I said, there's a lot of good hidden history in Brazil. It just needs to be, these stories need to be recognized. Let's see, what else do we have here? Okay, so this is an image from the Sunday evening news program on global television, Fantástico. So this is Viola sitting, having an interview with journalist Maria Julia Coutinho, who is she's really known as Maju on television. Fantástico is kind of like a 60 minutes type program that comes on every Sunday. It's been one of the top news programs in Brazil for years. Besides visiting the exhibition and the rehearsal of the samba school, the actress Davis gave an interview to journalist Maria Julia Coutinho, which was shown on Global TV's Sunday evening journal Fantástico. Coutinho is one of Brazil's most well-known journalists, as she worked her way up to hosting the popular Sunday evening news program years after being the target of a spectacle of racist comments upon assuming the role of weather girl on the television station's top daily evening news program. So this was a big story back in, was that 2015? And again, the country that refuses to admit that it's racist. So this story from 2015, more from the land of no, we aren't racist. Top news program's first Black weather girl targeted with numerous racist offenses on program's social network. So this is just, it was incredible to see this. She debuted on what is it, Jornal Nacional, and almost immediately people took to social networks just to pelt her with all these racist insults. And again, it's a question of how do you how do people deny that this goes on? It's something that you see all the time. And with the rise of social, I don't know where my pictures are. Here we go. With the rise of social networks, social media, people feel free, just liberated to just say whatever racist thing they want to say. And this is going on in Brazil for decades, but it's everywhere now that you have social networks where people can just go on and say what they want to say. Sometimes they create fake accounts just to say the things they want to say and not be held accountable. Just a couple of these comments. In the land of blacks, whoever eats bananas is king. You know, commenting about a black girl. She says, "Wow, how dark it is!" All of a sudden, she only got a job on Jornal Nacional because of quotas. Preta imuda, filthy black. Read one of the comments. I don't have a color TV to stare at this black. No, I mean the comments just went on and on. It was really just absurd to see some of the comments that people were making. And her co-host on the program, all put up signs, and you see the people in the background here. We stand behind you, like we are all Maju. What was the hashtag? It's like, okay, really. I mean, it's always so weak when people come out in their supposed support of somebody after they've been discriminated against. Brazil is just really intriguing with how they deal with the race aspect, right? Anyway, Davis also continued her friendship with actress Thais Araújo, who invited her to her home for a special meeting with a number of prominent Afro-Brazilian entertainers. Among those present to greet Davis were Araújo's husband, actor Lázaro Ramos, singer Isa, actress dancer Dandara Mariana, actor Ícaro Silva, philosopher Djamila Ribeiro, actress Zize Mota, and actor singer Seu Jorge. Araújo defined the meet and greet as a more than special night. So this is a picture she took with all of these people who were in at Thais and Lazaro's home. So just a few of these people that I recognize. Okay, this is Viola herself. This is Djamila Ribeiro. Longtime actress Zize Malta. She's probably about 78 by now. This is Thais Araújo. This is Dandara Mariana. This is Leia Garcia. This is Thais's husband, Lázaro Ramos. I think this is Seu Jorge back in the back and Icaro Silva. Just, just a few of the prominent Afro-Brazilians that came out to meet Viola Davis. On social networks, Thais shared a sequence of photos along with the artist, including videos of the event. She wrote, "Receiving friends, beautiful and more than a special night," she said. In 2019, during a passage through the United States to represent Brazil in an award ceremony honoring Denzel Washington, Thais visited Viola Davis's house and also recorded the moment. Quote, "Having this time with you and talking about the life of a mother, actress, producer, it was great. Thank you, Viola Davis and Julius, for receiving me in your home and in your hearts and for being so kind," Thais said at the time. Viola released a video and called the Brazilian her sister. So speaking about the importance of Brazil and the Portuguese, you could take that with a grain of salt. I mean, what does that mean? Brazil, Davis says, Brazil and the Portuguese are an important part of the film, Viola points out. What I feel is this connection between all of us, between Black people. We are only one port away. There is this impression that we are distant, but in reality, we are not, she added. Um, to comment on what she's saying here. I mean, yeah, I get what she's saying. Brazil and the Portuguese are important when trying to understand the history of the transatlantic slave trade. But then again, it's like, how much are we going to give, when you talk about the Portuguese and Brazil's role in the transatlantic slave trade, it gets pretty disturbing when you learn the facts about what happened during slavery in Brazil. I mean, we're talking about a country that imported 10 to 15 times more Africans than the United States. It began slavery before the US and it lasted longer than the US. So when I think of Brazil and the Portuguese in terms of the slavery era, there's a whole lot of things that you might not like when you start studying this topic. So just to close, by the time this story is posted, the Davis film will have finally been released in Brazil. As I wrote above, today's post wasn't meant to discuss the actual film, but I am curious to know how Brazil's Black media will address this movie. Preliminary articles have all praised the film due to its majority Black cast, Black director, and a story taken directly from African history, or at least elements of it. As I said, a lot of people are questioning why there are so many parts of this film that seem to be fictional. I've long argued that the presence of Black people doesn't always mean we should support something. And given the controversy surrounding the true and fictional elements of this film, its writers, and other issues, I do hope Brazil's Black media gives an honest review about this film. So with that said, I'm curious to know what you thought. I just wanted to share the, Viola Davis arriving in Brazil for the first time, her connection to Brazil for the last few years. So I'm just curious what your thoughts were as you listened to this piece. Did you learn something? If you like this story, definitely give me a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to this channel. I'm trying to pump out as many videos as possible. So if you like this video, do feel free to share it. That's the only way the channel will grow. And definitely push on that notification bell so you can get, updates, when I post new videos. So with that said, I'm going to end the video here and hope you guys follow me into the next video.